Ethanol, also called ethyl alcohol, grain alcohol, drinking alcohol, or simply alcohol, is an organic compound. It is an alcohol with the chemical formula C2H6O. Its formula can also be written as CH3CH2OH or C2H5OH. Ethanol is a volatile, flammable, colorless liquid with a characteristic wine-like odor and pungent taste. It is a psychoactive recreational drug, and the active ingredient is alcoholic drinks. Ethanol is naturally produced by the fermentation process of sugars by yeast or via petrochemical processes such as ethylene hydration. Historically, it was used as a general anesthetic and has modern medical application as an antiseptic, disinfectant, solvent for some medications, and antidote for methanol poisoning and ethylene glycol poisoning. It is used as a chemical solvent and in the synthesis of organic compounds and as a fuel source. Ethanol also can be dehydrated to make ethylene, an important chemical feedstock. As of 2006, world production of ethanol was 51 gigaliters, coming mostly from Brazil and the US. Etymology: the prefix and the qualifier ethyl in ethyl alcohol originally come from the name ethyl, assigned in 1834 to the group C2H5 by Justus Liebig. He coined the word from the German name. Ethyl is a contraction of the ancient Greek and the Greek word. The name ethanol was coined as a result of a resolution on naming alcohols and phenols that was adopted at the International Conference on Chemical Nomenclature that was held in April 1892 in Geneva, Switzerland. The term alcohol now refers to wider class of substances in chemistry nomenclature, but in common parlance, it remains the name of ethanol. It is a medieval loan from Arabic alcohol, a powdered ore of antimony used since antiquity as a cosmetic, and retained that meaning in Middle Latin. The use of alcohol for ethanol. Before the late 18th century, the term alcohol generally referred to any sublimated substance. Uses of alcohol. Anesthetic. Ethanol is the ethanol is the oldest known sedative, used as an oral general anesthetic during surgery in ancient Mesopotamia and in medieval times. Mild intoxication starts at, at a blood alcohol concentration of 0.03 to 0.05% and induces anesthetic coma at 0.4%. However, this use carried the high risk of deadly alcohol intoxication and pulmonary aspiration on vomit, which lead to use of alternatives in antiquity such as opium and cannabis, and later diethyl ether starting in the 1840s. Antiseptic. Ethanol is used in medical wipes and most commonly in antibacterial hand sanitizer gels as an antiseptic for its bactericidal and antifungal effects. Ethanol kills microorganisms by dissolving their membrane, lipid bilayer, and denaturing their proteins and is effective against most bacteria, fungi, and viruses. However, it is ineffective against bacterial spores, but that can be alleviated by using hydrogen peroxide. A solution of 70% ethanol is more effective than pure ethanol because ethanol relies on water molecules for optimal antimicrobial activity. Absolute ethanol may inactive microbes without destroying them because the alcohol is unable to fully permeate the microbe's membrane. Ethanol can also be used as a disinfectant and antiseptic because it causes cell dehydration by disrupting the osmotic balance across the cell membrane, so water leaves the cell, leading to cell death. Antidote. Ethanol may be administered as an antidote to ethylene glycol poisoning and methanol poisoning. Ethanol serves this process by acting as a competitive inhibitor against methanol and ethylene glycol for alcohol dehydrogenase. Though it has more side effects, ethanol is less expensive and more readily available than fomepizole, which is also used as an antidote for methanol and ethylene glycol poisoning. Medicinal solvent. Ethanol, often in high concentrations, is used to dissolve many water insoluble medications and related compounds. Liquid preparations of pain medications, cough and cold medicines, and mouthwashes, for example, may contain up to 25% ethanol and may need to be avoided in individuals with adverse reactions to ethanol, such as alcohol induced respiratory reactions. Ethanol is present mainly as an antimicrobial preservative in over 700 liquid preparations of medicine, including acetaminophen, iron supplements. Pharmacology. In mammals, ethanol is primarily metabolized in the liver and stomach by alcohol dehydrogenase enzymes. These enzymes catalyze the oxidation of ethanol into acetaldehyde. When present in significant concentrations, this metabolism of ethanol is additionally aided by the cytochrome P450 enzyme in humans, while trace amounts are also metabolized by catalase. The resulting intermediate acetaldehyde is a known carcinogen and poses significantly greater toxicity in humans than ethanol itself. Many of the symptoms typically associated with alcohol intoxication, as well as many of the health hazards typically associated with the long term consumption of ethanol, can be attributed to acetaldehyde toxicity in humans. The subsequent oxidation of acetaldehyde into acetate is performed by aldehyde dehydrogenase enzymes. A mutation in the ALDH2 gene that encodes for an inactive or dysfunctional forms of this enzyme affects roughly 50% of East Asian populations, contributing to the characteristic alcohol flush reaction that can cause temporary reddening of the skin as well as a number of related and often unpleasant symptoms of acetaldehyde toxicity. This mutation is typically accompanied by another mutation in the alcohol dehydrogenase enzymes in roughly 80% of East Asians, which improves the catalytic efficiency of converting ethanol into acetaldehyde. Recreational. As a central nervous system depressant, ethanol is one of the most commonly consumed psychoactive drugs. Despite alcohol's psychoactive, addictive, and carcinogenic properties, it is readily available and legal for sale in most countries. However, there are laws regulating the sale, exportation, importation, taxation, manufacturing, consumption, and possession of alcoholic beverages. The most common regulation is prohibition for minors. Fuel. The largest single use of ethanol is as an engine fuel and fuel additive. Brazil in particular relies heavily upon the use of ethanol as an engine fuel due in part of its role as one of the world's leading producers of ethanol. Gasoline sold in Brazil contains at least 25% anhydrous ethanol, can be used as fuel in more than 90% of new gasoline fueled cars sold in the country. The US and many other countries primarily use E10. Over time, it is believed that a material portion of the 150 billion US gallon per year market for gasoline will begin to be replaced with fuel ethanol. Australian law limits the use of pure ethanol from sugarcane waste to 10% in automobiles. Older cars should have the engine valves upgraded or replaced. According to an industry advocacy group, ethanol as a fuel reduces harmful tailpipe emissions of carbon monoxide, particulate matter, oxides of nitrogen, and other ozone forming pollutants. Argonne National Laboratory analyzed the greenhouse gas emissions of many different engine and fuel combinations and found that body's petrol diesel blade showed a reduction of 8%, conventional ethanol blend a reduction of 17%, and cellulosic ethanol 64% compared with pure gasoline. Ethanol has a much greater research octane number than gasoline, meaning it is less prone to pre-ignition, allowing for better ignition advance, which means more torque and efficiency in addition to the lower carbon emissions.